Even if you're not into the disturbing, you might have heard about the Millennium trilogy. Or perhaps you've seen the film adaptation, or perhaps you've seen the original film adaptation, which for some reason nobody talks about, and that's a shame. But most likely, you've heard about this one, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Welcome, this is Check That Book, a special place where we get acquainted with arguably the most disturbing books ever written. And today, we're not going to look at just one book. We're going to look at 3 books because the fans and myself consider the first 3 books created by the original author canon, so to speak. The rest, well, we'll talk about them briefly, but these 3 books I have here comprise the Millennium trilogy. Stieg Larsson was a Swedish journalist and a writer who is obviously best known for his Millennium trilogy, which includes internationally acclaimed novel The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, with which we will start. This is going to be a bit of a longer video. Yes, I might be a bit biased because these 3 books, starting with this one, are probably one of my favorites of all time. Stieg was deeply committed to exposing social injustices, so to speak, which influenced his writing, obviously, and investigative journalism. We will talk about it more when we get to the actual book, but so that you know, he was closely monitoring racist activities in Sweden and trying to, bring such questions up to the surface, returning to the subject of social injustice on so many levels. In this book, in this trilogy in particular, there's a good example. There's a lot of good examples, but one that I could partially relate to is, for example, the social injustice and prejudice towards, let's say, punk and goth people, without actually understanding that, sometimes it's just your physical style. It's your attire, nothing more, nothing less. Tragically, the author Stieg passed away from a heart attack in 2004, which was so abrupt and unexpected. A lot of people were actually speculating a conspiracy there because, well, people like that don't die suddenly, especially after writing such explosive things, and not just in his fiction. Albeit when you read his fiction, it's so full of factual statements that you might lose yourself and think that, hey, this actually looks like an actual case study of said people, of a mafia gang, of human trafficking, of a particular person, of a journalist. You get immersed so much that you sometimes tend to forget that this is all a fiction. And that's also thanks to Larsson's very good writing. Obviously, he is a journalist. He should know how to write factually. It leaves a lingering impression of some serious shit. So as of November 2024, as of today, the Millennium series comprises 8 novels. But like I mentioned before, we are going to look at the first 3 that are considered canon, that are considered original, mainly because they were written by Stieg Larsson himself. And would you look at the thickness of these bad boys? Each novel is roughly 530, 600 something pages. I love a good read, and this will keep you engaged, honestly. If you're into something lighter, or if you want like over the top disturbing, just no. No, this is not it. This requires commitment. And commitment, commitment I gave. And I am pleased to inform you that throughout the past decade, I tend to reread all three at least once every 2 years or so. And each time I do, I discover something new, yet again. I can't help but sing praises to the author and these books because, well, again, I am a bit prejudiced because I love it. I love the way it's written. I love the pacing, the descriptive language, but not too much. It's never gratuitous, but it is disturbing. It's disturbing not just because of certain scenes in the books, but the subject matter itself. You get lost in it, really. And you feel for our protagonists. We have two protagonists, and let's start talking now. The girl with the dragon tattoo. Probably the most famous of the three. Just 530 pages long. Nothing, not a big deal. If you're a reader, then you would agree with me, it's not a big deal. So we have our protagonist, Mikael Blomkvist, an investigative journalist, much like the author himself. Some speculate he was projecting himself on the character. I might agree, judging by the background of our author. So yes, Mikael Blomkvist, if you know the wordplay here, the surname Blomkvist, Kalle Blomkvist. If you know, you know. I'm not gonna get deep into it, but again, it's a very clever wordplay here, and a reason for slight bullying towards our protagonist Mikael. He is in some serious shit because when you're an investigative journalist and you go out there and expose someone important, even if you're just, even if you're right, you better be careful because sometimes those forces can overpower you. And he was overpowered. He was about to serve a prison sentence, and he was fined for libel, so to speak. Well, officially it's libel. And Mikael goes on takes on a job suddenly and goes on a trip farther north of Sweden to investigate a private case, which was a good break from his journalistic work at Millennium. Millennium, it's the place he works. It's his company. It's their publishing house. It's a publishing house. Hence the title, the Millennium Trilogy. It's so exciting to talk about this. I'm going to try to be more cool and more calm. Let me change the setting. So while Mikael goes on this private investigation, which in itself is a very curious case with awesome, surprising outcomes, surprising revelations. I highly recommend this book to anyone who loves a good detective story, honestly. And this is not spoon-fed, not ever. On the contrary, actually, the author tends to confuse you from time to time. It was great. It really puts your mind to work. You investigate alongside, kind of like with Sherlock Holmes. You investigate alongside Mikael. Whilst Mikael goes on this exciting investigation, we get acquainted with our second protagonist, who is arguably the face of the franchise, Lisbeth Salander. Lisbeth, like I've mentioned, is one of the most curious characters in literature of all time. You should really go into the Millennium Trilogy as blind as possible. I kid you not. Really, this is not as disturbing as you might think. Why is this on the channel? Because I do consider it disturbing, but not because it shows something grotesque. No, it actually doesn't really. And when it does, it more like implies something. And it works well. So, Lisbeth is this hardcore of a girl. She's been through some shit. But she's not a bad person per se. I mean, we get conflicted at first. What is she, a sociopath, a psychopath? What is it? But she is a victim of prejudice, actually, which we've talked about before. She's a victim of prejudice just because she, physically is kind of... This is a combination of this punk goth vibe that I get from her, and the movies depict it very well, actually. But yeah, just because she's into a certain subculture gets her labeled, gets her a tag. We actually have police officers who were supposed to protect her. They investigate into the matter and turn it around on her. And also, well, because she is this and that, and also she's not very social, instead of, digging into it, like, why is she antisocial? Why is she so closed off? No, we're not going to do that. Fuck psychology. She's goth. She's a lesbian Satanist. Must be, right? Because every girl who doesn't, who is not up to par with the so-called feminine standards, which, by the way, change every now and then so drastically that, an average female won't be able to follow them anyways. Be variable, be fun, be you. But, I mean, Lisbeth is comfortable in her skin. Lisbeth is the way she is without really harming anyone, without them truly deserving it. We kind of go into a vigilante territorium, but not really. Like I said, she's very antisocial, and Larsson gives very good explanation as to why is she that way. We discover a lot about her past later in the books. This one focuses more on the story of the investigation that Mikael takes up. Lisbeth Salander is she's a professional hacker. That's who she is. And I'm not going to tell you how, but they join forces with Mikael through a very fun interaction, mind you, which is depicted very well in the original Swedish film and copy-pasted by Hollywood, but yeah, whatever. It's not a bad film. We're going to talk about film adaptations in another video. Right now, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, albeit the title is technically about Lisbeth. She has the titular tattoo on her back. But the story is actually more about the investigation. So our two protagonists pair up. Very unlikely pairing, but they do pair up and investigate this shit. And wow, this is truly a gripping read. Go read it. Do yourself a favor and watch the film after you've read the book. That's just my opinion, but it does feel better this way. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the movie is better, or sometimes, in order to understand what the hell we're talking about here, you need to see a picture or, get through some key points, right? No, this is the classical case of first you read the book, then you take some time to digest, and then you watch the original Swedish adaptation. I highly recommend. The Girl Who Played with Fire, the second installment of the Millennium franchise, Millennium trilogy. Oh, wow. This one, well, my cover is not the best one, and it's paperback, so it doesn't look its best. And the visual representation of Lisbeth here, it's not the best, really. I don't see her this way. But we have what we have. What a unique and gripping heroine she is. And like I promised, in the following two books, we explore her character deeper. So in this one, Lisbeth kind of goes on the run. I mean, she already went at the end of the previous book. As to why, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But yes, we follow her around. We discover more about her past and the path of vengeance that she took and why. There's a lot of digging into the past here with rather disturbing cases. And again, the investigation that is suddenly already revolving around Lisbeth. And guess who's going to be there to help her out? Mikael fucking Blomqvist. I quote her, basically, that's how she calls him. I would really like to talk about the relationship between Lisbeth and Mikael, but maybe I should make another video that will be with spoilers. But because right now it's just the relationship and the chemistry between the two is very interesting. Despite the age difference, we have this, how to call it. I want to go into the direction of saying it's a romance, but then again, by the end of this book, you understand that Mikael is a truly good friend to Lisbeth, and I, for one, don't really believe in friendship between men and women. And, well, Stieg proves me right, actually. But not in a bad way. Not in a bad way. It's really interesting. It's more psychological, this one. And I'm going to quote Stieg Larsson here. If I remember correctly, I might use the wrong wording, but he said that we don't really know it, but we don't really realize it, but friendship is actually the most common form of love. Last but not least, the girl who kicked the hornet's nest. Oh wow, oh boy. This might be my favorite of the bunch. I, for one, like this sort of a genre where we either, read somebody's diary or letters, but what's even more gripping, to me at least, is court cases. So if you read through a court case, you follow a court, both in cinematography, like for example, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, very good example of what's going on in this book. Very different genre and different story, but the pacing and the visual representation of what's going on. I mean, yes, this half of this book is basically court. What's going on? Who's at court and why? Oh, I really don't want to spoil it for you, but it is cathartic. The ending is cathartic, and the ending is built up quite gradually and excitingly. It's not sudden in your face. It's not a punch in the gut. No, it's very well laid out. And the very end, the very end, the last, I don't know, like 20 to 40 pages are also unexpected, kind of, but at the same time you were anticipating, will there be like the ending? You know what I mean? No? Read the fucking book. And what makes this a good trio of books is that you got hints about the grande fuck-ups in this book in the very first one. You got hints of it. It wasn't laid out. It wasn't out in your face, but it was hinted at. And again, the middle section, a perfect build-up, investigation of the past, and this is the climax. I am absolutely stunned. This is a good read, but I will try to be not too biased. Let's be honest, it's not for everyone. If you prefer a lighter pacing, maybe, and if English is not one of your native languages, or if you're not profound in English, you will find it difficult to read this. Hilariously enough, because the original was written in Swedish, but the translator has done a magnificent job, I believe. I don't speak Swedish. My mom does. But yeah, fun fact about me. My mom does, I don't. How do we communicate? No, nobody gives a shit. Back to the book. So, we have Lisbeth back on track here. We have some exciting mathematical problems that Larsson kind of throws at us and confuses us with them. We have exciting scenarios, hospital stay, and secret societies. And kind of exposing them, really, and exposing them in various unorthodox ways, both legal and illegal, because sometimes, like I mentioned, if you are trying to expose the higher powers, then you need to be very careful, and sometimes you need to use their own dirty methods against them. So I believe it's justified. This one is dangerous. The characters, the protagonists, both Mikael and Lisbeth, by this book, you're already familiar with them. And if you're invested, if you've been invested in the previous two books, then those two are kind of like family to you, really. And you feel for them. You feel for them both. You're worried for them. What's going to happen, Corruption, extremism, all of that, injustice. This is laid on thick in this book, in a good way. You almost feel suffocated alongside Lisbeth. And when you get to the climactic ending, whilst it unravels, you're there like, yes, can it please be that way? Will it be that way? Not quite long ago, I've heard something truly disturbing about this trilogy. I've heard someone say, well, bro, why do you enjoy this? This is so overhyped. Excuse me? How do you fucking dare? Overhyped, really? Well, let's see. I haven't heard much about the original 3 books. Yes, there's 8 in total, written by different authors much later, and some not really well-received film adaptations, especially regarding the 4th book, The Girl in the Spider's Web, I think, or something like that. I have the list of the names. Let me find them for you. Just so for overall information, we have the first 3, and then we have The Girl in the Spider's Web by David. I'm not going to pronounce that correctly. We have The Girl Who Takes an Eye for an Eye. We have The Girl Who Lived Twice. We have The Girl in the Eagle's Talons. And we have Locaten's Claw. I haven't read those, but I've tried reading The Girl in the Spider's Web, and I don't know how. I really don't know how, but I could tell this is obviously not Larsson's writing. I don't know. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel like it was for me. I didn't feel like it was canon. To me, and actually, factually, the series end here rather well. It's just, you heard me read out those titles, right? The Girl, blah, blah, blah. The Girl, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like something to use as a commercial. Something to, advertise this shit. To make her into this hero, like this vigilante type of hero. And I heard that the film adaptation of The Girl in the Spider's Web was supposed to do just that, which is contradictory to Lisbeth's psychological state and her character. She's not really like that. Yeah, there are vigilante traits to her, but you forget the reason behind them. And also, a lot of critics who praise the new works, they forget that Lisbeth is socially closed off. She is a recluse. She doesn't like people. Kind of like me. I mean, misanthropically inclined is what I am. She can be downright misanthropic, but there is justice to her judgment. And I applaud her for that. But we have a good reasoning brought up by Stieg Larsson as to why is she like that. And that is also, in my view, a good attack on the healthcare, especially psychiatric healthcare system, not just in Sweden at the time, but pretty much everywhere. Besides, we get familiar with her psychiatric background and what she's been through, and the authorities that were supposed to support and help her, the authorities don't really give a shit about you now, do they? These books are very entertaining indeed. And coming back to why they are here, why are we talking about them? Well, they are disturbing. Just on a whole another level here. I bet I've said this before, but this is it. This is the thing. If the first one won't catch your attention, if Lisbeth as a character will not resonate with you, then this book alone, as a standalone, is good enough. You could finish it there. If you don't care much for Lisbeth's character, that's fine, because not everybody has to be interested in a life of a thin goth chick with psychological issues who also avoids humans and, just seems odd and out of place. But she is fucking awesome. And she's very good at what she does. I found her entertaining, and that made me want to read the other two, and I never regretted it. If you found Mikael's character interesting, then actually he is also explored well in the other two books, but the focus shifts to Salander, really. So give it a try. Start with this one if you haven't already, and see for yourself whether you'll go through the entire trilogy, or maybe you will be bold enough to go through all the 8 books, and maybe you'll like them. I'm not going to say they're bad. I haven't read them, really. I just read some reviews, and I decided to spare my time here. Throughout the trilogy, we get this vibe of abused females. A vibe of abused females. That sounds horrible, but this is the theme. This is how we're vibing here with Larsson, and that's a serious subject. Human trafficking, specifically females, females without, anyone really looking for them. Basically, females turned prostitutes forcefully, and that's actually something that really happened, and happened a lot, based on real events that Larsson took out of his profession and brought onto the pages, and I admire him for it. He made an interesting story that is fiction, obviously, but he had very good factual basis that, again, made me forget that I am, in fact, reading fiction. There's been also this theme of turning the series into this sort of a feminist wake-up call. And I actually disapprove of that, because, again, those people who push it as the feminist agenda forget that we're not talking about an average chick here. This woman has been through some serious shit, and she has her own psychological background and issues as to why she's that way. Because Lisbeth is a unique character, and she really is. I could easily draw a parallel with Sherlock Holmes here, because there's not many others like her out there. She has a certain talent, not one actually, but a certain special talent, and the way she is, true, we could argue that's the way the system made her, and the tragic events of her past made her. But then again, what are the odds that this exact scenario with these exact abilities are given to you in particular? No, not really. We forget that Lisbeth is a unique example, and she can't answer for all of women, obviously. But yeah, I'll leave the feminist agenda to the feminists if they like, but the first 3 books, it is there, like, it is subtly hinted at, but in a righteous way. Stieg Larsson is all about righteousness. Basic human rights, basic tolerance, basic acceptance, and, psychological support that should be given to anyone who needs it. I could yap more and more about the disturbing aspects of the book, like the crap that Lisbeth has been through. Mainly it's regarding her. The disturbing factors are mainly regarding her, and some, moments in investigation and how they intertwine with Lisbeth and her backstory. Those are very interesting. They kind of paint this, Larsson paints this picture of truly corrupt higher class, and ruling class in Sweden, which I believe was and still is the case pretty much everywhere. Wrapping this up, I would like to say the 3 original Millennium books, I highly recommend, I at least do recommend trying out with this one. Disturbing, yeah, but not in the way you might think. Most of the books on this channel are gratuitous and disgusting. No, this is some seriously good stuff. Not just as a disturbing book, but more so as a truly good detective story. It's a deeper dive into the world that we actually live in. The corrupt nature of our governments, the psychological aspects of our lives, and how corrupt the systems actually are, not just in the higher power, but even, at your local police station or at the hospital. Everything can be bought and sold, and Larsson was doing a good job, I believe, in exposing a lot of matters. But also, Stieg gives us hope in these books, especially in the last one, that no matter how cruel and overly powerful and corrupt the higher forces are that you're battling with, there will always be another force equally as powerful, if not more powerful. And that force is justice. Once upon a time. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like disturbing content, consider giving this video a boost in the form of an erect thumb, and make sure to subscribe for more. I humbly thank you. Also, make sure to check out my own book, Misanthropically Inclined, link for which will be in the description below. For now though, I thank you and goodbye.